Welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks. Today is open mic, so I never really know who's going to show up. So we'll be pulling the curtain back on that and chatting with whoever is there. You know, our goal here on Alzheimer Speaks is just to connect people to services, products, and tools. Do it in a fun, comfortable fashion, and hopefully a helpful one for you and those you know. So before I pull that curtain back, I am just going to do a couple of shout outs. One, I want to remind people to please go to alzheimerspeaks.com. We have a ton of free educational resources, and we would love for you to take advantage of those. They come in all different formats, from audio and video and printables, readables. So just go to alzheimerspeaks.com and check out our free educational resources. You can also go to our sister company, Dementia Map, which is a global resource directory. You can search at like 150 different categories. And if you have a service, product, or tool, and you might be a formal business or organization, or you might be like me, just a frustrated daughter. Maybe you're somebody living with dementia who has a support group, written a book, has a YouTube channel, a blog, whatever it might be. Maybe you've developed a product, a service, or tool. We'd love to have you be a member of Dementia Map. So just check that out at dementiamap.com. I'd love to give you a personal tour and talk further with you as well. And last, I'm going to give a shout out to Twiddle. I don't know if you're familiar with Twiddle or not, but they are wonderful, wonderful fidget muffs that keep people busy. So if they are sundowning or feeling a sense of anxiety, it just gives them something to do and is comfortable and warm, which is a big plus here in Minnesota. We're having a big deep freeze, so you can just put your hands right in that muff. You can visit them at the number 4 and then twiddles.com. So let's go pull that curtain back and see who's here. Well, I've pulled back the curtain and look who is here. We've got Alfredo with us today, and I can't wait for you to tell people more about yourself and how you got into this space, you know, because people typically don't land here by raising their hand and going willingly. And so, Alfredo, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, first of all. So my name's Alfredo Botello. I am a novelist and a screenwriter, also part owner of a cocktail bar, also the proud dad, along with my girlfriend, of two 3-year-old corgis, George and Dottie, brother and sister. I'm also a father of 2 human kids, Raphael and Gabriel, both in their 20s. And I'm also the son to my mom, Lisa. And my mom, Lisa, is the reason I'm here. It's the reason I'm talking to you today. It's the reason I wrote the book that maybe we'll touch on. It's called Spin Cycle, Notes from a Reluctant Caregiver, which kind of tells you a little bit about what it's about. But just a note there on, that's me and my background a little bit. A note on my mom. So my mom, Lisa, just a kick-ass single mom, first-generation immigrant, comes over, not really speaking much of the language, just makes a life for herself. I remember in the 70s, after the divorce with my dad, she was taking belly dancing lessons and Toastmaster classes and going on Sierra Club hikes. And to put me through private school, she had her day job at IBM working hard. And then I remember for a stint, she was handing out towels at a kind of posh tennis club at night. So this should give you a picture of why she's kind of she's kind of a heroic figure to me. And she's just a great person. So when, 5 or 6 years ago, the mom I had known for 50 years started changing, I didn't understand. basic stuff. Like, so she's a German woman and she kind of checks the boxes. She's very punctual and organized. Everything's kind of in its place. So she lived and breathed by the paper calendar she had on the side of the fridge. All the appointments, the hair salon this time, the doctor this time, taking her husband, my stepdad, to dialysis that time, all laid out. And there just came to be a time where she couldn't make sense of her own calendar, which I didn't understand. Like all these crossouts and then liquid paper here and there and asking me, well, what day? I'm like, what, Mom, that's what the calendar's for. You don't need to ask me. You have it. But she was just sort of scared and unsure of herself. And I have to say that that's just one example. We can talk about how it was for her to take her meds and lose track of that, even though I tried to write up a little cheat sheet for morning, lunch, night, all these things. And I just got frustrated, like, Mom, what's wrong with you? And she would say, I can't get it together. She had that kind of self-awareness. That's how it kind of began. Anyways, I felt like, yes, over time, I came to realize what was going on. The diagnosis was likely onset Alzheimer's. And even then, that didn't turn me into the perfect, patient, loving, soft son. I still was short and snippy, and all those feelings that I had a lot of shame and guilt about prompted me to write this book, because I wish I had this book 5 or 6 years ago. I want anyone who picks it up and goes, wow, that character is saying and doing exactly what I said and did. And it's not always I'm not always proud of it, but at least it's raw and it's honest, because I feel, this is now me as speaking as just a human being and as a writer, like if I connect with a book or a piece of music, a movie, whatever, like I just feel comforted. If someone is saying something that's a little bit vulnerable, like I'm like, oh, I feel closer and I feel less alone. And that's what I really want. And that's why I'm talking to you today, is like, I've turned into this. I mean, I've written things before, but I think I'm especially zealous and almost like a nutty missionary about this, because I just wish I didn't feel so alone all those years ago. And I didn't know there were resources out there. And I want to be part of that conversation. So that's a long-winded answer to your question.
No, you touched on so many different things. You talked about the calendar, and I am caring for a couple of people right now that used to be, track everything kind of on that paper calendar, or, a magnetic one that they had on the wall. And the other day I was talking with somebody and I'm like, well, just look on the calendar. They're like, what calendar? And I'm like, well, it was on the fridge. We just got this brand new one. It was really good, sticky magnets. And I don't even know how she got it off how she got it off the refrigerator. And it just took a hike, and it took quite a while to find. But that disorganization, my mom was like that. She would write everything down, and then it was the sticky notes, and you just see the physical differences. And I remember almost being able to, like, when I looked at my mom, hear her mind spinning, like just chugging, trying to get where she wanted to go or find what she was looking for. You could just feel the work and see it in her eyes and stuff. You talked about the medications, and I know for myself, with my mom had dementia, my dad had brain cancer. We started out where they could handle all of that stuff. And then it was like, okay, now we're going to put them in the cases, and the Monday through Friday, and pop those things open. And then that wasn't working. And then pretty soon I ended up getting like little key size envelopes, and I'd have to set those up 3 times a day for each of them and write down, AM, PM, blah, 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 blah. This is what time. And then I'd have to call and prompt them to take them out. I could set up a whole week at one time. And then it got to the point where, no, that didn't work either. I had to go over every day and just lay out a day. And then pretty soon it was like, nope, I just have to give it to them. So you see all of those transformations as the disease, progresses, and you just have to kind of punt and try, because there is no manual of how to do this. And every person is different, and every family's ability to even be able to meet some of those needs is different, depending on, are people working, or, are they close? Are they long distance? And long distance in caring, can be 20 minutes away. It doesn't have to be all the way on the other side of the country, depending on how fast someone's life is and how full it is, to feel that way. So those were all great things to share. And then you mentioned about writing about the shame and the guilt. And I think that's the thing I hear most in my support groups is shame, guilt, and patience. I need more patience. and but everyone's kind of relieved when they hear other people's stories, because you can really beat yourself up significantly when you snap, or you just, you lose it. I know I did with my mom, and then I created a tool that got me on track, and then I shared that, just like you've shared your story, because people are looking for those stories of real life situations, and how do you cope, how do you deal, how do you adjust. So I think all that
Yeah.
stuff is so powerful.
And I wanted to back up to something, Laura, you said a minute ago, talking about the meds,
Mm-hmm.
which is because this one was, it really, it resonates with me because it was a bit of the same situation, which is I began with what I thought was a simple sheet for
Oh
breakfast, lunch.
yeah.
Yeah. So great, no problem. But then that sort of got too tricky. So I scrapped that and started over, and I had just now a little box to check off for each
Mm-hmm.
time. And then that got too complicated. And I guess, and what I want to say a few more things about that. But one of the big lessons for me about that was, so I'm a Virgo, and I think Virgos are kind of, it's the one astrological sign where I feel like I'm skeptical of astrology, but every single Virgo trait I think I have, like super uptight, a little bit on the anal side. That's putting it negatively. I like to say we're very organized, and that you can't spell analytic without anal, and very detail oriented, and we also we like to sort of have things. At least I'd like to have things kind of fixed and solved.
Mm-hmm.
With the med stuff, when I thought I had come up with a sheet, I thought, okay, good, I'm done. I fixed mom. Good, awesome. I'm good boy. You did it. And then it would last as long as it lasted. And then, oh no, you have to scrap that and start over. So one of the hardest things for me to adjust to, although I think there's actually a big silver lining to it if you can get there. And I want to just preface everything I'm saying with is there's a big asterisk here. It's aspirational. I think we're probably all works in progress, and I don't claim to be, oh, I'm this fully realized Buddha sitting there, and I'm just patient every moment of the day, and I'm great with mom every day. No, I have good days, I have bad days. I like to feel I have a little bit more of the good than the bad now, especially since going through this experience. But hey, this is all just trying to look in the right direction and reach for there. So, anyways, I'm having to learn to kind of adjust and scrap what had worked a minute ago. And then also the image that pops in my mind is whack-a-mole. You just kind of like, you're just trying to put out the fire that's right in front of you that moment, that day, right? So finally the medication, and I remember kind of telling the doctor, look, this is as simple as I can make it. And it was really interesting. He pointed something out. He goes, well, just imagine, Alfredo, how many steps are really actually going on there that you're not thinking about, that you're taking for granted. The step is you look at the sheet, you know you got to take diltiazem or metoprolol right now. The sheet says so. Okay, so then you go from the sheet to the weekly box, the blue box with the thing. And you open it up, and that's the right pill. So you think now you got the right. Now you got to bring the pill, and you take it to your mouth. Now, though, you have to pick up a pen and remember to check the box off of the thing you just did, and get the right box for the right meal. So when you broke it down, suddenly what I thought was one step, well, really, it's more like 10 steps if you really look at it carefully. And that was kind of a light bulb moment for me to realize, okay, you're going to have to maybe start trying to think a little bit less out of your lens and a little bit more out of mom's lens. Even if you can't really be there, you can kind of glean some of it just because you're there. So that's kind of what I wanted to say that about when you were talking about how you had to keep adjusting the med situation. It's like just when you think you've solved the problem, you haven't. Things might change. And I think that's a big lesson for anyone who's a caregiver. And then, yes, now we can jump into shame and guilt all you like.
Well, and when you talked about the meds, then I thought, oh, I forgot about the other one, because I used to have the med sheet, and that was real simple. And then they were struggling with that. So then I color coded the meds and the bottle tops, and I put a dot on those. But again, it only worked for a while, and then, it was time to adjust. But then it made, those things that I did made it easier for me to grab stuff and do stuff when I needed to do it too. And so that was kind of interesting in and of itself. But
Color coding. I hope someone out there listening, because I now looking back, because that's something so visceral, colors. where it's so primary. That's a great little tip there, and hope someone picks up on that.
Yeah. So now with who I'm working with now in the family, I've made up my little med chart for me. I bought a case because there's so damn many bottles. It's like I have a carry case for them. I've taken those away because they were taking their pills wrong, or they just decide they didn't need this one today or whatever, and would land in the hospital. So I have those with me, but it's just really interesting. On the sheet I have now, I color code it like with a dot of a different magic marker every week when I fill those out for myself, so I can use my checklist a little bit easier, because I don't. I also found that the don't think your checklist is going to remain the same, because those medications are going to change a lot
Also true.
over time. And so, and that stuff I think used to irritate me a while back, and I'd go back and fix it. And it's like now I just expect that. And I'm actually asking questions ahead of time on some of the medications or clarifications, or making sure that the labels on the bottles match things. I was just in the doctor yesterday with one of my family members, and I said, it's still saying on here they're supposed to take it in the PM, but you've told us it's okay for her to just take all of her pills in the morning. Can we get that changed? Because if I get hit by a car, I have it noted on my sheet, but somebody might not have access to my computer. They're going to start by what those bottles say. And then you're going to be having these conversations all over again. So sometimes it's keeping up with the doctors and making sure that those labels match. And even with, and I don't know if you ran into this one, but different doctors will refill. Like one doctor might have prescribed this, but you're in with this doctor and you need a refill. So then they'll write the order, but they don't know something's changed, or the two doctors don't necessarily talk, even though. And I haven't figured that one out, because with electronic stuff, it should all carry over. But we found a few loopholes in that process too. So having your own list and confirming with their lists, I found was really helpful too. And I didn't, back in the day, I didn't think I had to do that, because that's their job. I'm just administering and picking them up and doing that. But your job is much larger, I think, than.
Yeah, and I think what you're touching on too is that it is a big job, and even a well-meaning doctor that it's going to be hard for them to devote the level of attention and detail that you maybe as a professional caregiver, as a family caregiver, are going to do it. So the closest I had to what you're describing with the kind of mixed signals, or kind of making sure that everything's consistent. I mean, my mom at one point had fallen and broken one wrist on a Friday and broke the second one on the Sunday.
Oh,
It was like for a day or two, she still could kind of feed herself. Things were okay. And then, of course, she slipped, because she loves that's another thing. She loves her wedge shoes. They're not high heels; they're just wedges. And my mom kind of in some aspects, as she grew up, her heyday was sort of the mid '60s. She loved wearing white gloves to the movie theater. She was a glamorous kind of girly girl in some regard, so she didn't want to give up the wedges. And even though I could see her wobbling a little bit, I'm like, well, she's probably going to be okay, rather than just a flat, practical shoe. Well, sure enough, the wedges are there. She slips on them because they wobble, and then I right there. And of course, this is one of those things I beat myself up for. On that Friday night, I should have taken every shoe out of her closet and replaced them with nice flat sandals, the ones I found at Target, which are just fine, but I didn't. And then there was a second. Anyway, she ended up in a kind of acute care kind of nursing facility for about, I want to say about 2 weeks, as she was recuperating. And then those doctors came through, and they're making their rounds, and they're adding to they're throwing stuff onto her med list, and that might only be for a while, or it might be they might be like, well, I know better, and this is going to be long term. But then you have to kind of confer with mom's primary care person, and maybe you have to also, maybe on top of that, there's a geriatrician. Who knows? There's so many people in the mix, and I feel like all of that funnels down to you. Like it does kind of funnel to us as kids maybe, or whatnot, to kind of keep track and make sense of it. So it's a big job, and I think that's what your comment made me think about. That is how we are kind of we're the point at the end of that funnel.
Yeah, you're kind of the controller of the corporation.
Yeah. Right.
Trying
You're the CEO without a salary.
yeah, get those spreadsheets out and see what's going on. I laughed when you were talking about the shoes because my mom was like that too. She wanted her heels and it's like this is so not safe. But when you said, oh, you felt guilty because you should have just known to get rid of them all. But you would have gotten in a huge fight with your mom because she would have let you have it, just like mine. They don't want to change. They don't want to admit there's an issue, which is totally understandable. And sometimes, these things have to happen for things to cave in. And then now it's a safety issue. It's not, you as a caregiver overreacting to a situation, because I think that's how they perceive it on how we're reacting. But it's scary, and you don't know, is this going to be an ongoing thing, or was this just a one-time slip, because they've always been able to do this, and so it's hard to picture that they can't, that their gait is off, or they're getting dizzy now when they stand up, where that didn't used to be an issue. And they might not even tell you that they're dizzy, but they're getting up slower and different. And you can see kind of the apprehension sometimes when they start to walk. And that wasn't there before,
Yeah,
or
it is, right. I think it is scary. And we talked about this for a couple seconds before we went on air, is that I also, that we're not the most confrontational people. We're kind of more the peacemakers. I feel that way about my personality too. So I don't like to have those uncomfortable talks with mom, where I feel I have to be the tough guy, the hammer, and bring it down. But I had to. I remember, Lori, at one point. So my mom currently is in assisted living. So I went from being her, like, after my stepdad died, and there's a whole conversation about what happened there, because in short, my stepdad had kind of all manner of physical ailments kind of falling apart. Kidney failure was the ultimate cause of his death, but he had skin cancer and a couple other things going on. But his mind was always very clear. Now, my mom, on the other hand, I just thought, well, okay, he's sick, she's well. But I didn't realize until he was gone that he actually had been doing a lot of caregiving. And kind of they were complementing each other. What he couldn't do physically and what she couldn't do cognitively, they were both working together. So my narrative, my understanding of that all changed. But the point I wanted to make there is, I remember at some point, when I now had to be a little tougher. So after he passed, for the first 6 months or so, I was either living with mom. We're about an hour apart by plane. Living with mom, trying to stay there, help her keep her independence with her condo and all that, or she was living with my girlfriend and I, and up in our place. And then at some point, I became her care manager more when it did become overwhelming. And now she is in an assisted living place, but there were moments there where I felt like I had to be a real jerk, like when she became very, very fixated on the meds. Did I take it? Did I take it? Really worried. I think just basically worried, like, I want to be healthy. But she would start to bug the med techs there, but also the other residents. And then she would follow the residents into their room and try to get them to answer the question, did I take my med or not? And they have their own, how are they going to know? They're not going to know that. And she resisted, for example, getting help with bathing, but I had seen her fall now and break both wrists, and I didn't want her attempting to bathe alone. I wanted there to be a chair and someone helping her. And all of that she couldn't stand, and I understand it. She was definitely with it enough to have self-awareness to know that these independent things, these sort of stuff she always did, were kind of being taken away, and help was being forced on her. And I remember writing a note which had 4 pieces to it. I don't know if I can remember it all, but it was in big 24-point font type. Do not bother other residents. Do not ask about your medications. Do not ask when I'm coming. I'll come as often as I can. It was all these do nots. Do not, do not, do not. Because there was a moment there where the administration of the place was like, we're not sure she's a good fit here. She's causing so much problem. We're getting complaints from other residents and their families. And this was the 3rd place she was in, and she seemed to be a good fit for it. And I was just desperate. So I put up these like 6 or 7 copies of the same note throughout her room there. Just felt like all I'm doing is saying, do not, do not, do not, do not. It just felt so negative and nasty. But at that point, I was desperate. I'm like, whatever it takes for you not to get kicked out, we're going to do it, because this place is good. It's close to where I live. I like the people. I like the activities. Anyways, we got over that hump in time, but it was not fun to fight with my mom on those things, because I didn't like this. I felt like I was crushing her spirit. She loved her wedge shoes. That's part of her identity. She, to this day, and fortunately, this is stuff we can still do. She wants her nails done maybe twice a month. So we'll go out and I'll take her out to the salon and we'll get them painted a certain way, or the hair, or she's still very stylish with her dress. Like that's part of her identity. And I felt like I was stripping it away, but I had to. I felt I had to.
Yeah, but that stuff is really important. The nails and the shoes, it's just the character and the personality, and is very important. I remember uh, my mom had a friend who could. My mom ended up in a nursing home, and voluntarily, my dad ended up in there because he fell down 2 flights of steps. My mom was always going to come and live with us. And after about 3 weeks, she woke up one morning clear as a bell. Now, this is a woman who could not look out the window and figure out, does she need her snow boots or flip flops? What's she going to wear? And she, in total clarity, said, I want to move into the nursing home. And, my jaw dropped.
Yeah.
And of course, I took it personally. Aren't you happy here? Made it all about me and my family. And she goes, no, honey, it's been wonderful. But she said, Dad and I have been together for 49 and a half years, and I'm not leaving him now.
Wow.
And so it was like, okay, I'll make that happen. So my mom, I called the nursing home, and they're like, okay, we'll move your dad's roommate, and she can move in with him. And I said, no. They're like, what do you mean, no? And I'm like, she doesn't have to watch him die. I know my dad doesn't have long to live. I said, I want her on your highest functioning floor, because even though her skills weren't that high, her social skills were amazing. I mean, people thought she worked there, and her eavesdropping skills were even better. The nurses were always like, how does she know? And I'm like, she was always good at that, she never lost that. So she moved in there, and then I said, I want her to have her meals and one activity on that floor, because she has to get acclimated. And the rest of the time, I was selling real estate at the time and had a team, so I could just devote my time and leave, and my life would still spin. But there was no way she could go to another floor. She couldn't maneuver that on her own. So I would just spend the day with her and Dad, and it would go wonderfully. But it is about protecting their dignity and who they are as a core, but it's also about safety. And so this one friend of my mom's, who could never go see her when she was in the nursing home, I shared this DVD with her, and on the picture it was myself, a musician, and my mom. And this woman hadn't seen my mom in probably, I don't know, it was probably 7-8 years. And my mom's appearance had drastically changed. And she just yelled at me in this restaurant, just at the top of her lungs, how disgusting I was. And she couldn't believe I was lying to her, and I was supposed to be taking good care of her. And because of the picture she saw of my mom, she thought my mom wasn't well cared for, because her hair wasn't done and she didn't have makeup on, and she always had her ruby red lipstick, and she didn't have any jewelry. And I mean, I could go on and on and on about how her appearance had changed. And I remember getting really silent. And then I just looked at Kay and I said, thank you. And she screamed at me even louder, what are you thanking me for, Lori? I can't believe it. And I'm like, I said, Kay, I'm thanking you because I didn't know you don't see what I see. She's like, what do you see? She looks horrible. That doesn't look like your mom. And I said, Kay, this is what pure joy looks like today. My mom's teeth look like a rusted chainsaw with fried rice hanging off them, because she doesn't know what a toothbrush is. And it scares her and it hurts her. We tried the swabs, we tried the washes, none of it worked. And instead of making my mom's day for the first anywhere literally from 4 to 6 hours miserable, we said, we're going to pass on the teeth.
I just have to say that's a beautiful story. First of all, about you guys understanding what it meant, what happiness looks like now for your mother. That's a big one. The teeth, I've just gone through the same thing. So my mom did need and she's meticulous still. She brushes and has a little pointy thing and does all that. And she doesn't understand, mom is 84. So, hey, even with good care, teeth, they go in time.
Yep.
She had bad teeth as a kid, as a war refugee, and, very little hygiene and so on. But so she had one or two that had to get removed because they were causing her pain. And then went back for another appointment, and the doctor's like, well, actually, these now need to go. But they weren't causing mom pain.
Mm-hmm.
And until my mom complains about them, what does it matter? Like it's the trauma of going in, having the teeth pulled out, looking in the mirror, maybe missing the gaps for my mom. I know her well enough to know that would be much more difficult than just leaving them be if they're not bothering her. So
Yep.
I like you, I let that one go.
Yep.
And onto the question, you talk about the expression on your mom's face there at dinner. So when I take my mom, one of her, and this is, I'm sure, something that all caregivers have discovered,
Mm-hmm.
a certain amount of routine and predictability is a great grounding thing for people with dementia. So my mom, there's a certain Starbucks we go to every time, and she always gets her decaf latte, and she loves it to pieces. But what she really, really loves is babies and toddlers. She just goes crazy. So whenever a family comes in and there's a baby or toddler, it's great because she will go right up to them. No kind of social barrier. She has her walker. My mom, that's kind of one of the fallouts of the broken wrists and the wet shoes. Or now it's sensible shoes and a walker, and those were battles. But look, the compromise was again. My mom is very stylish. She hates the green tennis balls on the base of the walker. They look tacky.
Mm-hmm.
So on Amazon, I found black ones, and they're much cooler, and she loves them, and that's our compromise. So now she's like, well, I've got this walker, but I've got the cool looking tennis ball. So that made that more palatable. So we're at Starbucks, and anytime mom's there, she'll just walk right up there with her walker, and she'll just go, oh, so cute. And she, people might say, oh, your baby's cute, but then they turn away. But my mom, she's now at a place where she doesn't worry about, is it socially acceptable to kind of fuss too much over a baby. She'll just stay there and just keep staring and waving. And it's one thing that's so heartening to me, Lori, is that I've yet to see a parent not pick up that maybe my mom is not, that my mom is in a different place, and that all she's doing is appreciating their beautiful kid. And they will smile and let her say hi for 2 minutes if that's what makes my mom happy. I love that strangers, these are these moments where I feel like I have faith in humanity, right? That these strangers understand intuitively what's happening. And I just see the smile on my mom's face. She is, I think most kind of, I don't know, religious philosophical traditions talk about the value of being in the moment, like letting go of the past with all our ruminations and not being so anxious about what might or might happen tomorrow. Like my mom is there in the moment. Like that's what I aspire to. So that's a case where I wish I could be more like mom in that moment. Like she's fully there, enjoying the smell and the taste of the coffee, enjoying the beautiful baby, and she's nowhere else. She's right there. And so I'm learning to see like, oh, she's at a level of joy that I kind of aspire to. And I just love that strangers pick up on that. And we just, in the whole kind of human super things, we just get it intuitively. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool story, and that's so powerful because it's a visual story for people to be able to hear, and you can feel the joy, you can sense the joy just through your storytelling with that. And it's a basic root within us. And my mom too taught me, and I'll never forget, I'm aging myself, but what the heck. When I was still selling real estate, I had my phone, and then I had my pager, and all this stuff with me. And my mom, I remember, turned to me one day and she said, Lori, you can just turn them off. The world is still going to be here after you leave here, after our visit.
Wow.
They'll wait for you. And I'm like, again, it was one of those clarity moments with her. And she taught me really how to play again, how to really be immersed and in the moment at whatever it is that I'm doing. And I still don't do that near as well as I'd like, and I hope I don't have to get dementia to get there. But that is one of the gifts, is to realize that life is really precious. And as the disease progressed with my mom, what I found was the most precious moments were the smallest. They weren't big, they weren't flashy, they were really tiny, tiny things that I can see now that so many people miss because they're too busy being busy. And
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had the same experience too, which is that and then on just on the subject of moments of clarity, and they're kind of there's also if we can be there in a way where we're not always feeling kind of rushed and trying to fix some problem with mom or dad. I remember, and it just made me laugh at the time because it was so amazing. So my mom, at some point after the diagnosis, and this is I didn't even realize this was part of the picture. Like once you're diagnosed with Alzheimer's, you are immediately reported to the DMV. That's our
mhm,
driver's license agency out here in California. And you're going to get your license pulled because you're not safe. Now, the doctor in this case was like, well, it's kind of borderline. I'll give her the chance to pass the test. If she can pass the written and the driving test, I'll be okay with it.
mhm,
Oh my gosh. So we started the cramming and the online tests. I was there with mom doing the best I could to kind of like repeat, go over and over and over. And we'd go to parking lots. And I felt like I was teaching my kids again. But so I taught my kids how to drive. We're in the bank parking lot on a Sunday, just
mhm,
trying to remember all this stuff. Anyways, it all began with it was just kind of not, it wasn't even the test yet. It was just a phone call with the hearing officer to just say, yes, we want to go through this process and so on. It wasn't that big of a deal, but my mom was so nervous and afraid of screwing up on this phone call that she just panicked. And
mhm,
I was there, and so was a friend of hers. She had asked her friend to come for moral support. This is when she was still able to live in her condo herself, more or less. And we got on the phone and speakerphone, and it was a disaster. She kept turning to me to answer the questions he was asking. And he was asking very basic questions like, "What's your birth date? What city are you in?" Like just basic stuff. But my mom was just couldn't handle it, and it was just grueling. And the guy was kind of at the end. I think he was just bored. He was like, "Look, just go take the test. This is fine." Like he was just kind of getting the preliminary out of the way. He didn't really care. But my mom was so worked up. And I remember her after we got off the call, and it was a very disastrous call. It really was. Her friend turned to her and said, "Lisa, why are you such a glutton for punishment?" And I right then I thought, "Oh gosh, glutton for punishment." My mom, that's a pretty sophisticated phrase. And I was like,
mhm,
I better translate that to what I
mhm,
was going to try to think of a way to kind of explain that to her in a way that because some of her verbal stuff had gone. It seems like the
mhm,
verbal stuff kind of goes first. And then out of the blue, out of my mom being upset and panicked and unable to give her own, middle name on this freaking phone call, the friend asks, "Yeah, why are you? What does it mean to be? Why do you be a glutton for punishment? Do you know?" And I said, "Mom, do you know what that means?" She goes, "Yeah, it means I don't give up." And it was just like she, she fully understood the phrase. She was defiant and proud. I laughed. It was such a joy to come out of this tense, uncomfortable phone call with my mom just boom coming in there with a razor sharp comeback, right on point, fully understand. And that's one of the just you just have to kind of shake your head at how this disease plays out because there are some things like you said that we think are ultra simple, like taking the pill out of the box, that just seem simple, but they're not. And then stuff like understanding a fairly complex idea that's expressed in words, and she gets it. Like I never know what she surprises me. I guess that's what I'm getting at. The takeaway here is, man, just when I think again, like I think I understand completely what's happening, I don't, and she
mhm.
surprises me.
Well, and it could be, and I'm not saying it was, but it could be a phrase that was used throughout her childhood that was familiar that we don't use as much these days. And so those older memories are easier to access. And as the disease progresses, one of the most interesting things, and I have a friend, Cindy Lazinski, who's in Colorado, who has a dementia friendly group called Dementia Together.
Mhm.
She is now a Speckle train the trainer. She's the only one in the US. She got this program from Penny Gardner over in the UK, but they describe how what happens to the mind as far as memories and reminiscing, and they say and they explain it like a picture book. And I won't do as good a job as what Cindy does, but she says in the beginning you have a picture book and a photograph book, and there's pictures throughout it, and you look at the picture and you see who's there and who's there and what happened. And then as you go further in the picture book, the pictures might be there, but the memory of what it's about isn't anymore. So you physically see it, and then pretty soon the picture is gone, but the feeling is there. And so then something else can trigger the feeling or make those connections out of the blue. And I look back at that with my mom sometimes, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's what was happening. Like when my dad died, and my mom was pretty far along in the disease, and a lot of their friends hadn't seen them for a while. And at the funeral, my mom is just consoling everybody. How are you doing? So glad you're here. Yes, he was a wonderful man, blah, 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 blah. And people are like, I thought your mom had dementia. What's going on? And I'm like, my mom is stepping into her old role. This is who she's always been at her core, to take care of everyone else. She doesn't realize the guy in the casket was her husband of almost 50
Oh,
years.
wow. Wow. That's amazing. And you're right. Of course, in the case of my mom with the DMV, it could be that it was an old memory that was still
Mm-hmm.
on the tip there. But yeah, you're right. There, of course, that the older stuff sticks around easily. And I also wanted to touch on what you just said about feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I do talk about this, at length with the characters in the book I wrote and how they develop and what they come to understand, because I think it's real. Yeah, words might go, specific memories, but feelings are one of the primary things, like along with food. Like my
Mm-hmm.
mom never really had a sweet tooth. Well, just a little story on that. So when she was a teenager, she worked at an ice cream shop, and she
Mm-hmm.
put on a few pounds and she felt a little chubby. I've seen pictures back then. She looked fine. I mean, I'm just saying, but it stuck in her head. And so as a grown woman, she rarely indulged in treats.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even think she had that much of a sweet tooth. She really didn't, that I could tell. But I know now recently, the last couple of years, she loves her treats. Like we go and get the little gold foil wrap chocolate balls. She
Mm-hmm.
loves those. She loves Hershey's Kisses. Uh, and I just love that she is indulging herself now. Like all the worries, the old worries are gone, and the primal desire for chocolate, which I think
Mm-hmm.
most people have, has come back. And why deny it? So she really does enjoy those things. And on the feeling front, I remember one day, and I don't know if you've had similar experience. So you mentioned the nails and those
Mm-hmm.
kind of things that kind of maintain their personality, their dignity. It is really important. There's one day though where I genuinely had only so much time to spend with her, and so I was like, okay, mom, we'll go get your nails done. That's fine. But when we were there, I didn't realize I didn't sign up for just a little trim and color. It was the full, take it all off, put it under the heat, like a good hour plus. So by the time she was done, I was so irritated. I'm like, Mom, I thought we were just going to get them clipped or something. And the next time I saw her, she didn't remember she asked, can we do my nails? I said, well, and I tried to write down, because she has bad hearing. So one of our communication tools is my laptop. I
Mm-hmm.
just type out things and flip my computer around, because I don't like to yell. Because I feel like when I'm yelling, I sound angry, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be. And people around me, I feel like, well, they're going to think I'm yelling at my mom. And isn't that awful? So anyways, it's just a better way to communicate. So I wrote, hey, I took you last week. And she just had no clue what I was talking about the
Mm-hmm.
nails. But then next time we did go, I don't know, a couple weeks passed, and maybe it was the toenails, who knows? But the one thing she said, they go, "Ooh, I remember last time we were here, you were pissed." Talking about me. So she didn't remember going to the appointment, but she remembered that I was irritated with her. And
Mm-hmm.
she remembered I was pissed. And not a big deal, we're human beings, we do that. But this kind of bleeds a little bit into the shame, guilt stuff a bit, is that I wasn't very patient, and I wasn't a bit of a rush, but I have to remember that where she may not remember the little facts and details of the thing, the feeling of the thing is
Mm-hmm.
super important. So if I'm going there for that hour visit or however long I'm going to be there when I see her, I mean, I really do try as best I can. I don't always succeed, but put whatever, if I'm having a bad day or whatever, leave that at the door, because my mom will pick up on that, if nothing else. And she'll remember it longer than she'll remember the facts or what we actually did. So it is, again, it's like the primary stuff is there, the chocolate, the feelings, and so on. So I try to remember that. And again, not always perfect, but that's one thing I've learned.
Yeah, and that's huge. I think it's for all of us, and we don't realize how in tune those things are in us. I always, with your mom now eating chocolate, I say it's, the ego has left the building. They're not worried about what anybody says or thinks about. And I'm thinking, man, what freedom. how nice would that be to live your day every day, not worrying about is someone looking over my shoulder or what are they thinking? And, as I've gotten older, I'm 65 now. I embrace that much more than when I was younger. Even if I didn't state it to anybody in my mind, I was kind of like, what are they thinking? Or sometimes I think I even was looking for their reaction
Oh,
instead of just moving forward.
yeah, I have to share this phrase with you. I think it's so on point. It struck me. This is when my friend's mom said it when he was getting remarried, and just
Mhm.
out of the blue, she goes, and at the time she was probably in her late 60s, early 70s, I want to say. She just says to me, in your 20s, you think everyone is staring at you.
Mhm.
In your 40s, you stop caring. In your
Mhm.
60s, you realize they were never staring in the first place.
Mhm.
I just thought, wow, I've never forgotten that. It's been years since I heard it, but I just thought she nailed it. And what you're describing with happily with yourself to some
Yep.
degree, certainly with my mom, like I don't care. I'll eat as much chocolate as I want, and I'll walk up to whatever baby I feel like it. And if the world doesn't like it, it's their problem. And
Yep.
I wish I had more of that. It's like again, it's one of the things like it's not just us. We don't have dementia, so we're smarter, we know better, we can
Mhm.
try to fix or teach them. No, yeah, we try, sure. But if you're really attuned to it, if you really open up and watch, you might actually pick something up. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to learn some of that myself.
Well, and there are so many beautiful, beautiful lessons in this disease. Though I wouldn't, wish it on my worst enemy. If you open yourself up to being accepting of not being able to control and take life's detours with grace. I think with my mom, so many times I would not have learned or been exposed to different things if it wasn't for her that have been really truly gifts for me, or new opportunities or things that I could share with other people or whatever it might be. It's kind of like, how many times have you gone on a trip and the road is closed and you're like, I'm going to be late, blah, 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 because you have it all timed out on when you're going to arrive and how you're going to get there and what the drive's going to be like. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I didn't know this little store was here, or this is a cool little park, or this is, what a gorgeous view, or all these little things that you close yourself off to by not being open to change. And, being when you can kind of roll with the punches and not get in that fix it mode. And that's what I was in initially. I'm going to fix this, I'm going to make it better. And it's like, no, that's way too controlling. You can support it, go in supporting, them and their dignity and quality of life. I think that leads you on a better path for both of you than trying to fix it, reconstruct it, make it go away, because it's not budging, you know.
Right. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that you also touched on the fact that it makes art. It's not just yes, I think it's good for them, but also it's good for
Mhm.
us. It's a form of sort of enlightened self-interest, if you want to call it that, where
Mhm.
yeah, if you do roll with it, if you can be open to the changes and things not sort of being fixed, I think you'll both be happy. You and the person you're caring for. And it's all to me, it all kind of boils down to the umbrella I would put over all is compassion.
Mhm.
But to get there, I think one of the biggest things is are you familiar with a woman named Judy Cornish, the Dawn Network?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so just a quick shout out to her. Again, for my book, Spin Cycle Notes from Our Reluctant Caregiver. I reached out to her early on while I was still in draft form,
Mhm.
and she was fabulous. We had a couple of Zooms together, and she read early drafts, and she's an expert in the field too. And she was like basically another editor to me, and I'm super grateful for her. And she was a great helped me understand dementia and all that kind of stuff. But one point she made, and I think it goes right to what we're talking about, is that she said, "Well, look at the expectations. When we have our own kids, a 1 or 2 year old, a baby, we don't
Mhm.
we're not expecting them to do their taxes and figure out algebra. We expect them to play and eat and sleep, and everything else is gravy. Like that's enough. And then when you're an adult, yeah, maybe we expect you to hold down a job, maybe put a roof over your head, do those things that are, and that's kind of maybe appropriate for expectations for someone in their 30s or 40s, whatever. But she was pointing out though that we then with our elders, especially with dementia, we don't really drop our expectations. We still expect them to be sharp and on top of it and all that, and that's not really appropriate. It's not fair. It's like it's not appropriate. It's sort of you need our expectations need to shift, and she kind of boiled it down magnificently. She just was sort of saying, they're not things. They're not broken. They're not broken adults. They're different adults. And that just was such a light bulb moment for me again, because I think I had been treating my mom like she was kind of broken. Like when she said, I can't get it together, and I was trying to make the calendar work or trying to get the meds to work or trying to write down tips. I wrote down, 10 tips for fighting anxiety, taking walks and doing this. And, when you're feeling anxious, it's very hard to look at anything like that and take the advice. The advice is great when you're calm, but when you're anyway, so all those things, I was basically trying to fix the problem. And rather than sort of say, well, take it on its terms and support it, of course, make sure safety's there, try to maintain the dignity, the happiness, but don't put the same expectations. And that's a big thing. When you let go of that, I think it's so freeing on all parts. I think that's what you kind of a little bit what you were talking about there. Is the freedom that comes from not caring so much.
Yeah. Well, and I think of when I was younger, and people would say, well, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? When? And I would just get furious with that. And that's probably how they feel with the pressure we put on them of, why can't you do this? Or when are you going to do it this way? Or blah, 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 blah. And you want to be able to live your life in your own realm with the skill set that you have. And, you just want a happy, peaceful life at all ages. And I think we've all felt the pressure of someone else's expectations on us, or watchful eye, if we admit it or not, or, feeling ostracized and like we don't fit in. And that's a horrible feeling, at all ages. So it really is, life is, what do they say? What the heck is that saying? Life is kind of like a petri dish. It's you don't know what's going to fall into it and what's going to grow from it or what's going to die. But it depends on how we're going to feed it, and how we're going to observe it and treat it. And we can't fix this, but we can make it much better. We can't make it go away, but we can use I think our multisensory skills to really improve it. And like you said in the very beginning, be in the moment, and that's a phrase I think that's been overused, and people think it's new age and it's this and that, but man, there's a lot of benefits to slowing down. I think of just when I grew up, I mean, it was fine for the kids, for us to be out all day long. Our parents never checked in on us because there wasn't cell phones. We flew out the door in the morning and we came home by dinner time because somebody whistled, and we knew it was time to all scatter like rats back to the houses, and stuff.
Right.
And we could go to any neighbor's house, and there was a safety in that, comfort in that, freedom. And we've totally lost that in the world we live in today. And so if there's any way we can bring that back to any age or any stage of a person, that's a pretty special thing to be able to do, and to be at peace with yourself, saying, I either maintained or I improved, their mood or, their situation, while I was involved with them. I think that gets underplayed, and yet that's probably the most important thing to all of us, is to feel good around somebody else.
I agree. And I know what you mean earlier when you said being in the moments, is it new age? And yes, of course, the phrase it's overused, all that, but I think it's overused for a reason, because the underlying truth of it is very true. And so even if you are skeptical about it, I think just take from our own lives, if you just take moments. And to me, there are certain things that put you right in the moment. So eating ice cream is a good one. Like, it tastes so good. You're just there. Or for me, listening to music. When I'm listening to music, I can often really be fully there, because like that's where my attention goes. or even just observing my two corgis. Like those animals, they don't hold grudges. They
Mhm.
don't. They're not worrying about the email they sent. Was it the right tone or not? They're not sweating the bill they might have to pay tomorrow, or is it going to? They don't sweat any of those things. They are just fully present. And when I'm playing with them, so am I, because you can't. When a beautiful little brown-eyed creature is staring up at you to throw their toy across the room, what are you going to do? And I'm not going to be thinking about what I have to what my grocery list is for the afternoon. I'm there playing. So all those things, I say that because I do feel like, oh, be in the moment it does sound a little bit airy fairy or maybe overused, but that I think the wisdom of it is so transparent. It's just like the joy of being fully in the moment is a real thing, and we all know it. We have it. We might have different names for it, but yes, I think it's huge, and it's something that we can learn from our folks who do have the dementia.
Yeah, and having that sense of gratitude for what remains, what we still have, instead of looking at all the losses that we have.
Yeah, that's a biggie too. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a story I tell people. It's called Tears, Fears, and Joy. And I always ask my audience, which one do you want in your life? And of course, everybody says the joy. And the tears, I say, is when we are looking in the past and we're grieving everything that we've lost. And we're just focusing on all the things that can't happen anymore or don't work the way they used to. And the fear is projecting all the things that are to come. I've heard, oh, this is next in the phase, or, we're going to have to deal with this and that. And then, I'm kind of a type A personality. So I'd be making out all my plans to avert all of those things, to be in control. And what I realized one day was, if I'm living in the past or if I'm projecting in the future, I have no time to identify when joy is before me or create it. And so, boy, I really got to change my habits on what I'm looking for in life, because we all know what we look for is what we're going to find. And so, if we're looking for things to scare us, or if we're looking for things to be sad about, we'll find those. But the joy, can override all of those things. And there's so much of it. And again, it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be sitting outside and the breeze hitting your face, and the smell of some flowers, or it doesn't the music, it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to cost a lot of things, but it can bring peace to us. And I think, especially in the world we live in today, we all need more of that. And so if we can be guided by dementia and learn some new kind of tricks of the trade, maybe in a hard way, one that we wouldn't choose to do, but take those lessons and apply them, because what's good for dementia to me is good for all of life. I
Well
haven't,
said. Yeah.
yeah, I haven't learned one thing in this thing that I can't apply in other areas of my life. I don't know if you feel that way too or not.
Yeah, of course. Of course I do. I do feel that way, and again, I struggle, because I'm a Type A organized person
Mhm.
too, so I have to learn to kind of loosen up a little bit. But um, yeah, and I agree. It's the little things, because, and this is beyond questions of dementia. It's more like life. It's like, oh, a New Year's Eve or a birthday party or some officially quote unquote big celebration. You might have a good time, but there's so much expectation put on those kinds of things, like the old family reunion. We're going to have a wonderful lunch together. Well, then people start fighting, or they're bored, or they don't agree on the food, whatever the problem is. So I think when you have almost no expectations, when, like the breeze hits you and you just enjoy that, or seeing the kid at Starbucks who you didn't plan on seeing, it's like those, because there's no expectation around them. They're just extra gravy. And the trick, I
Yeah.
think, the challenge is to recognize that we have this extra grade. That's a special gift. That's not just a random. I mean, it can be a random thing. You can just see it as well. Just, oh, are they going to get in line before me? That woman, they quit her kid. Is she going to beat me to the front line? Oh, damn. Like, that's one attitude. The other attitude is like, oh wow, that's a really cute kid. My mom loves it. What do I care if it takes me 5 more minutes to get the latte? If I can squeeze some joy into the experience, so much the better. So
Yeah.
it is that is the pivot I try to pick up on from mom.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for chatting. I'm glad actually no one else showed up, because this has been a really, I think, interesting conversation for our audience. Why don't you tell people where they can get your book? I know we're going to have you on the show to do an actual show, about the book itself, but this was nice hearing about you and sharing so many different examples with people was really helpful.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. So yeah, again, the book is called Spin Cycle: Notes from a Reluctant Caregiver. Easy to get. If you punch that title into Amazon or whatever your book vendor is, Barnes and Noble, you name it, it'll pop right up. You can also go to my website, and the thing about my website too is I tried not to make it too much of a dry author website. So there's stuff like playlists of music, because I am a music freak. There's playlists of music that I like, different genres. I also co-own, I think I mentioned I co-own a bar now, but I co-owned a few dive bars. So there's flyers from 20 years of DJs and stuff. So they're kind of artsy and cool. I like them. I'm very aesthetic, how I see things. So anyways, that website is my name. It's alfredobotello.com. I'll spell it because it's not that common of a name. It's Alfredo, B as in boy, Otello, alfredobotello.com. And there you'll have information on my first novel, 180 Days, but now more importantly, the current novel, Spin Cycle. And you can, on the back, you'll be able to see the back of the book, which will give you a synopsis. So you can see if you think it might be right for you. You can read a sample of it on that site as well. So there's lots of little goodies there to see if it piques your interest and if you think you might relate to it. There's also an audio book on Amazon. There's an audio. So however you take your information in, I've got it as an ebook, audiobook, softcover, hardcover, and everything links to Amazon. So check it out if you're interested.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for spending all this time with us. I really appreciate it. And are you had said you're a screenwriter too. Have you ever thought of putting your book into a film or a play?
I have. So it's in the hands of my manager right now to try to figure out, because I think this doesn't really give anything away too much, but the protagonist, he's a high school teacher and he starts his own kind of school called APPA, Adults Patiently Parenting Adults. It's kind of a group. So I think that piece alone, if you just take the 8 or 9 characters who show up, these sort of misfits who are all struggling with parents, because I think what a big thing about the book and about just reality is, at least my opinion, because I didn't see it coming, that an adult child caring for their parent is a massive chapter in life. And I think personally that it's criminally under-discussed. Like if that lesson was being taught out there as I was growing up, I missed it. I mean, yeah, I got all the stuff about, oh, you're probably gonna have kids one day, and that's why there's dolls for kids to play with and books and Lamaze classes. We're all kind of programmed to have that. But man, I did not really think much about what this might be when I have another child. When I'm in my 50s, and that child might be in her 80s and might not be soft and chubby and round and boo boo baba all the time, and it's going to bring some challenges for me. I feel like when I talk to my friends about this, they're all just like, "Oh yeah, you feel that too." So I think there is a hunger out there for talking about this in some form, the book, movie, however it's going to be. So yeah, I could see this being a great dramedy, character based, kind of not shying away from the difficult stuff, but ultimately a heartwarming story. So we'll see what happens with that. I mean, I've got a lot of things kind of in the fire, as most screenwriters do. But yes, I'd love to see it done. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I just think using multimedia to get this whole thing out is so important because everybody learns different. But a film and plays and things like that, they really take people back because they're not expecting the deep reflection that happens with these type of powerful stories. They go in and go, oh yeah, I'll do that, but it's really really powerful. I know I was involved with one film called His Neighbor Phil, and we air it and then or screen it, I should say, and then we do a talk back and people share their stories, and it's just, most of them say, I've never had a place to share my story before, or a safe place where people understood. And so it brings people together that normally wouldn't be together a lot of times. And we chose actually not to put it in the theaters or even sell it independently, but to show it and screen it so that people could be in a community of liked people. And I know a lot of people go, well, but we want to see it. And it's like, this can really be used as a tool to facilitate some powerful, powerful conversations and education, because some people could walk out, because it's too painful.
Mhm.
And just never feel hope. And I think all of us in this industry want to give those resources and hope, and hopefully a listening ear to their stories, because we can all learn from one another as well. So I could
I
just talk
agree,
to you all day long.
I'm sure the people who are listening are already familiar with your website, which
Mhm,
you kindly walked me through last week. But in terms of multiple vehicles and ways to learn and to
mhm,
grow and to handle this, sure, please plug your website if people are already on it. But that's great when you mentioned the movie as well. Like whatever, like I said, I've become kind of a zealot about this, about getting
mhm,
the word out. So whatever format works, whatever form that people will connect with people.
mhm,
Maybe someone will write a song about it. They're going to
mhm,
a song about the experience of being a child, an adult child, and maybe that'll get through and resonate with somebody. It could be, like you say, the movie, books, whatever. Conversations like this that we're having. That maybe
mhm,
someone checks out a podcast and they feel some like a sense of not alone and comfort and
mhm.
resonance. Boy, that's all you can ask for, and I think that's great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. And for our listeners, we ask you to be a giver of hope, like, click, and share. It's not about the numbers with us, it's about getting the information into your sphere of influence, because there are people that you might not even know that need this information. And the more we can make things available in a non aggressive fashion, just real subtle, comfortable conversations, and resources, the better we're going to have impacted lives for the greater good. So thanks, everybody. Till next week. We'll see ya. Bye bye.